How did an uninhabited Pacific island become the focus of no fewer than 3 powerful nations during World War II? And what does a solar eclipse have to do with it? It was June of 1937 when a prior eclipse was scheduled to cross the tiny atoll of Canton Island. To capture the event, the U.S. Navy teamed up with the National Geographic Society to bring a small team and some heavy-duty equipment to the island. After hauling 22,000 pounds of filming equipment from Washington, D.C. to the atoll via Honolulu, the 13-person team comprised of scientists, photographers, an NBC announcer, and one artist arrived at the tiny dot on the map, only to find there was someone already there. Britain had also laid claim to the island, sponsoring a New Zealand scientific expedition that mirrored the Americans. According to National Geographic, the two got off to a shaky start when the British contingent fired a shot across the bow of the American ship over a dispute about the most convenient anchoring spot. Each side wired their respective leaders on how to handle the dispute, and were told to play it cool. And the dueling missions turned into a friendly competition over which team could capture the better shot of the eclipse. Following the event, the Americans packed up and steamed home to look at their footage, but not before leaving a large concrete monument embedded with 2 American flags. That display would turn out to be consequential. The Japanese were about to start their march across the Pacific, and the pork-chop-shaped atoll was deemed perfectly situated for the Americans and their allies to refuel planes between Hawaii and Australia. It also offered proximity to the Japanese home islands. For those reasons, both the British and Americans still had interest in the island, and in August of 1937, Britain sent 2 officials to the barely habitable island to lay claim to it. The duo asked the Americans to remove their marker, but President Franklin D. Roosevelt doubled down and claimed the island, citing its past use by American whaling ships. Within days, he dispatched drums of water, 400 cans of poi, and 3 Hawaiian colonists to live there, according to National Geographic. On April 6, 1939, an agreement had been hashed out between the 2 nations, culminating in a 50-year joint control. But their presence, however, failed to escape the notice of the Japanese. Japan viewed Britain's tolerance of the U.S. encroachment as evidence of Anglo-American cooperation, despite the White House press secretary, Stephen Early, telling reporters that the agreement had nothing to do with war or war plans. This was a bald-faced lie. In January 1942, a U.S. Army and Air Force group called Task Force 942 arrived on Canton Island to build a runway, airfield, barracks, a hospital, and more. In addition to being a hub of Pacific air movement, Canton Island was used for anti-submarine searches, photographic reconnaissance, and bombing missions. In 1943, it became a major base for conquest of the Gilbert Islands. Altogether, a total of 30,000 Allied soldiers, sailors, and airmen were stationed there during World War II. But Canton saw no real combat during the war. A tug-of-war for a tiny, uninhabited island that would play a major part in the biggest war ever waged on planet Earth had its root in an unconventional source, a solar eclipse. And there's your bit of military history for the week.